Hey guys, how's it going? Paul Harris here. Welcome back to another one of my videos. Today, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about my experience from working at home. Now, for the last 9 years of being employed, I have pretty much had to go to the office 5 days a week. I'm a qualified accountant and now working as a finance business partner, so it isn't natural for me to work from home. But since COVID, the last 2 years, I have made this transition. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about my experience and what I find the pros and cons are of working from home. Now, there's been a bit of a mixed opinion in the news and from different companies about whether working from home is a positive thing to do. You have sort of the newer establishments, say the Facebooks, the Coinbases. Coinbase doesn't actually have a physical office. When they registered and listed on the stock exchange, they didn't actually put an office down. So they're purely a virtual company. So they have taken a massive push to decide that working from home is completely fine. But then you have the sort of older establishments, say the Goldman Sachs's, the JP Morgans, lots of different companies that say that you have to come to the office full time, 5 days a week. Now, obviously, I can only give my view on my current role. So let's say working in a finance department or an accountancy department, however you want to look at it. So I can't talk about, say, if you're a coder or if you work in HR or if you're like a direct salesperson. You can imagine that certain roles lend themselves to working more remotely. Whereas if you actually have to have face-to-face contact with a client, or if you need to actually manufacture something, you need to be in a factory, then obviously you need to go to the office. That's just a given. So I'm going to talk about more the sort of financy and accountancy based roles that are within the field of my understanding and what I actually work on. Now, why is it that certain businesses are saying that you should go to the office? Well, the CEO of Goldman Sachs says, "We know from experience that our culture of collaboration, innovation, and apprenticeship thrives when our people come together." So let's just break that down. So firstly, when I talk about, whenever I hear the word culture, it makes me cringe a bit because I'm not somebody who likes corporate talk at all. If you go into the office and people talk about synergies or they use way too many abbreviations to try and make themselves sound intelligent, I always get this feeling of just cut the crap and say what you're actually trying to say. If someone's trying to use abbreviations, I just think, just tell me, just speak in plain English. I always think of that movie Margin Call where they're in this boardroom scene and the CEO of the company says to this analyst,
"And please, speak as you might to a young child or a golden retriever."
And that's kind of how I like to be talked to in an office. Whenever someone tries to make something sound bigger than it is, I just cringe. And whenever someone talks about culture, that's another thing that I cringe about, because culture is something that I just feel is a term used by companies to try and big up a role or to big up an organization into more than it actually is. At the end of the day, people want to be treated nicely. People don't want to be treated like they're stupid at an office. And that doesn't take a huge amount of cultural change. You just need to have an office full of nice people where, people aren't working stupid hours and have this determination to try and be ridiculously competitive with each other. So, a culture of collaboration, and then you're getting that from Goldman Sachs, where in Goldman Sachs they have a huge turnover of heads because people don't think that the culture is very good there. Seems a bit naff to me to say that you need to go to the office for that collaboration. If anything, I know of Goldman Sachs as being a very highly competitive environment. So I don't like it when people say culture of collaboration. So I don't really think that is achieved through having to be in the same physical space. You can work quite easily using things like Teams, where you can ring people frequently. I think if you can have a remote culture of collaboration as well by saying that, less emails, less one-liner chats, just, on Teams, just actually you have to physically ring people, you have to have your camera on. And I think that would encourage a sort of collaboration as well. So not buying that as one of the reasons. The next point he says is innovation. Okay, so collaboration, working together. Innovation is actually creating something. Now, I work in finance. I work as a finance business partner, as I said. The idea of innovation is a challenging one for an accountant to think about because it's a very standardized process. There isn't a huge amount of innovation that can get created. However, obviously, if you have a more creative role, then bashing heads with people in an office and coming up with new ideas and having the best ideas surface to the top might help. However, I did read the book How to Steal Fire, and it talks about corporate events where you go to a hotel and they've booked out a sort of conference room, and you have that sort of spider diagram activities where everyone has to try and think creatively. And actually, what this book says on How to Steal Fire is that people don't really think creatively in large groups. If anything, when you're in a very large group of people relax and just let other people do the talking. Also, sometimes the loudest people are the people that win out, because people don't want to challenge ideas when they're in a large group of people. And often the best ideas have been created in isolation. Facebook was created in a dorm room by Mark Zuckerberg. It wasn't created in a room full of people thinking about an idea. People say a camel is a horse created by a committee. You try and come up with a good idea, and then everybody else's ideas get thrown in, and it becomes, a worse idea as a result. Now, that might not always happen, but the idea of innovation is created in, when people come together. I would actually challenge that idea of actually being true as well. Next one, apprenticeships thrive when people come together. Now, I have to agree with this one. I'm fortunate that I have been working for the last 8 years. So I've gained that base knowledge. I've gained how, the sort of effort that you need to be applying when you go to, when you start work. I've, been able to bounce off people and learn off people by, being able to ask them more frequent questions, and then sit down and just have a more informal chat in the office. And I think as a newbie starting out at a company, I do think that it's a challenging environment to go into a company and not have that physical space. And I feel like not having that interaction with people might have a very negative psychological effect on you, because one thing that I've always struggled with whilst working is this idea of, how is everyone else performing? Am I performing as well as everybody else? Getting that reassurance from people that I've never really had, that I'm performing well. That's the sort of thing you want, and that's the sort of thing you're not going to get, is frequent communication. You're doing the right thing. You're working hard. I can see that you're doing something. Now, so out of what he said, innovation, not sure, collaboration, don't really agree. But in terms of training, I do think training is a very beneficial thing to have face-to-face contact with people. But let me just touch on a few more points here about why working from home is great. So I've enjoyed working from home. I've done it for the last 2 years, predominantly because of the obvious reason of flexibility. So when you're working from home, I've recently had a child, and the sort of FaceTime that I've had with that child, not having to commute, seeing him at lunchtime, that is hugely beneficial. And, that's time that I would never have had if I was working from the office. And that's a real shame that there isn't that level of flexibility all the time. But in that sort of sense, there's been a huge benefit for me working from home. Also, I go to the gym frequently, and not having to get up at 5 o'clock to go to the gym at 5:30 is also a very nice benefit. I feel like I'm not knackered all the time as a result of that. So the combination of those two things, obviously the flexibility is really good. You feel like you have more of your life, but you have more of your life that you've created outside of an office. And it's about determining, on average, do people create that life outside the office, or does work become their life? And I've created a good life where I have a lot of friends outside of work, but people meet their partners at work. People meet their best mates at work generally. And I've had that foundation from previous companies I've worked at, where I still have those friends from high school and all, people I've known a long time now. And I have a wife and a child and family and all this stuff that I have outside. But really, I could imagine it being a very lonely time, particularly if you just move cities to have a job and you're having to work from home. How would you build up that network of people? I mean, it's hard enough in an office. You have to work there a long time before someone goes, oh, should we go out for a drink? And you have to get through this awkwardness of being like, well, I live nowhere near you, but I guess I'll make it work. And you slowly have to develop this, you have to compare the effort of going to see someone that lives an hour away versus building a friendship. Now, how do you do that when, firstly, you don't go to the office and physically see someone? Someone started at my company, worked there a year and a half, and now he's leaving. I didn't even see that bloke. I think there's a lot of mental side effects that come from working from home And one of them is that sort of isolation feeling that you might get, which is negative. But then at the same time, there's a benefit of psychologically, I've seen my child more. So it really depends what point in your life you're at where working from home is a positive or a negative thing. And I think the last point I'll touch on, which is another psychological thing that I've dealt with, is there's been periods of time, particularly when I hadn't focused on going to the gym, and I think it's really important that you have a focus of like an activity that gets you out of the house, is that I went like weeks, or well, I'd go an entire week where I felt like I'd never left the house. I mean, it's sunny at the moment, and you have the evenings, you have the mornings that you have more opportunities to go out. But particularly in wintertime, like you might get up, go, start work. You might not speak to anybody then. If you don't have a wife or a partner or someone you live with, you might not see anybody. You may not even leave the house. And that might happen for an entire week. Now, you might get cabin fever. You're stuck at home. It's like, I need to get out of this space. And you can't, it's difficult from that perspective as well. But all these things can sort of be mitigated, what I've described, by forcing yourself to have more of a social interaction outside of work. You don't need these things to happen inside work. And some companies have spent billions, and this is probably another reason why they want people to go to the office. Companies have spent billions. Google or Apple have just spent $1 billion or pounds on their London office. And they spent that much to have massage parlors and free food and to encourage an environment that people want to go in, because they feel like they're going to get more out of employees if they do that. People go in as a nice space to be in. It's nice to see people, and you just feel better as a result. You work better as a result. And I feel like that is a major drawback of working from home, is that isolation. It's a very negative feeling, and particularly if you're not getting out and doing stuff. But all those can be mitigated. So overall, what do I think about working from home? Really, it depends on which part of your career you're at. I think it's worked out really well for me. I'm happy when work from home. I have sort of become prone to it now, and I don't think I'll want to change that anytime soon. But I anticipate me having to go back probably 2-3 times a week at some point in the future. But I think my level of work and efficiency has not changed as a result, and I enjoy it. I think it's pretty good. But that's my view. Hopefully that was interesting to some degree. I find it difficult to understand like what my subscribers want, what people find the most interesting. I just sort of put out content that I think about and think, oh, that'll be an interesting video. And then, I get mixed results with it. But, I think people subscribe to me talking about like corporate environments and job as a financial accountant and working in a finance department. So I'm going to try and make more content along those lines. If that's the sort of thing that you find interesting, just maybe subscribe to my channel, hit that like button. See you next time. Bye-bye.